Hi friends, Miss Cristiano here. Today we are going to read the story, Poppy, How Many Stars Are in the Sky? That's our title. And the author is Angel Vigil, and the illustrator is Adil Ahmad and Martin James. There are two illustrators for this book. Do you remember what an author does? Think about it. The author writes the words. Great job. And do you remember what an illustrator does? The illustrator draws the pictures. Super, if you knew that. Kiss your brain. All right, now let's go over the parts of a book. This is the front of the book. And this is the back of the book. Good job. And this is the spine of the book. It holds the pages together. Great job. Now, just by looking at the front cover, what do you think the story is about? Think about it. Maybe you could be right. I see that they're outside. I see some stars. I see some characters. Let's open up and find out what happens in this story. Here's our first page. Whenever they visited their grandparents' farm, Ariana, Carlos, and Maria gathered after dinner to listen to their grandfather's stories. On warm nights, they sat out on the porch with grandfather rocking peacefully in his old wooden rocking chair. He always waited until dusk to begin. So we have our characters. We have the grandfather, who's right here, and we have the three children, Ariana, Carlos, and Maria. Those are the characters. Characters are who the story is about. Like children everywhere, the children had a favorite story. And like grandparents everywhere, the grandfather never tired of telling it. Do you have a favorite story that your family tells you? Think about it. That night was a perfect night for the story. As they looked up at the evening sky, just beginning to fill with its bright, shiny stars, the children began to chant, "Poppy, how many stars are in the sky?" They were chanting, they were saying that over and over again because they wanted him to tell the story about the stars in the sky. That must be their favorite story. Poppy gazed lovingly at each of his grandchildren. Gazing means to look at, so he looked at them lovingly. And he asked them, "How many do you think?" Carlos raised his arm to the starry darkness, saying, "There must be a zillion. Do you think a zillion is a lot of stars or a little bit? You're right, a zillion is a lot of stars. He thinks there's so many stars. Grandfather laughed heartily. "Well, mijo, that is pretty close. Maybe we'd better count them. But first, I have to tell you the story about the stars and why they are in the sky." Ooh, I wonder what the story is. Why do you think the stars are in the sky? Maybe. And knowing the story was about to begin, the children pulled themselves even closer to their grandfather. Ariana nestled comfortably in his lap, while the others leaned against his legs. Here she is. She's nestled. She's very snug, close to him. She's ready for the story. And they're leaning against his legs. Just as he had countless times before, Poppy gazed up towards the stars. Remember, gazed, he looked at the stars and pointed his weathered finger. Weathered finger. Do you think that grandfather has an old finger or a young finger? It's weathered. An older finger, maybe his finger looks old and maybe wrinkled. It's weathered. You see, mijos, every time a child is born, a new star is added to the sky, and that star shines forever for the child. That is why there are so many bright, shining stars. Every child is a gift from the universe, and each star tells a story of that child's life. That is beautiful. As they listened, the children dreamily searched the starry sky, imagining all the children in the world, and secretly they tried to find the stars that were theirs, the bright stars telling the story of their own lives. So next time you look at the stars and you're counting them, think about which star is yours. Their grandfather's soothing voice counted and continued. If you look around, you can imagine that the stars make pictures. We can tell stories about the pictures. These are constellations, look. Since tonight is a fall night, we see the fall animals. See, over there is a bear that once chased your father in the forest. Look, you can use your imagination to connect the stars, and you can see different pictures. So this one must be the bear. And can you see the ladle towards the back of the bear? It tells the story of the delicious stew your mother makes for you. Can you see the ladle? That's what their mom uses to scoop the stew or soup. Here's another one. Over there is a lizard, like the one I once caught you at the water pond. So you could even go outside at night and look at the stars and try to see if you can imagine different animals and pictures in the stars. That sounds super fun. And through the middle of it all runs the bright starry path of the Milky Way, leading you back home if you ever get lost. And here's the Milky Way, right in the middle of the stars. Knowing that their favorite part of the story was nearing, the children repeated their chorus. Poppy, how many stars are in the sky? Patiently, the grandfather began. Well, let's count them. Ariana, you count first. Sweet Ariana looked at the sky with steady eyes and proudly proclaimed, Look, a big one. Here she is, and she pointed. She found a big one. Can you find a big one? As the other children smiled, the grandfather lovingly answered, Yes, Ariana, you are right. There is one big star in the sky. Does anyone else want to count the stars in the sky? Poppy asked. Carlos answered, I'm learning to count in school. Let me count. With a deep laugh, the grandfather said, Yes, Carlos, there are 10 stars in the sky. But if we keep counting like that, we will never get to bed. He counted. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Maria, do you want to count? Now it's Maria's turn. Maria counted carefully. I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50. Shall I keep counting, Poppy? Chuckling softly, the grandfather said, Well, what do you think, children? Should Maria keep counting? What do you think? Should she go higher than 50? Maybe. But the children knew their grandfather had finally reached their favorite part. Together they shouted, "Poppy, you count. You tell us how many stars are in the sky." With his calm voice, the grandfather said, "Mijo, look at the stars in the night sky. All my life I've been counting the stars in the sky, and now I finally know that there are 50 estrellas in the sky." The children howled with delight. 50? There are more than 50. And just as he has countless times before, the grandfather shook his head, saying, "No, not the number 50, which means 50, but the words 50, which means infinity. That means there are so many stars and you cannot count them all. Infinity." Your lives are like that too. There are so many things you can do or be. You can't count them all, just like you can't count all the stars. There are no limits. As he put his grandchildren to bed, the grandfather sang a lullaby to them. And he sang it in Spanish, just like he had heard it sung when he was a child. Do you have any songs that you like your families to sing with you? Think about it. Later, snugly tucked into their beds, the children thought of their grandfather's story and all the beautiful stars in the sky. As they fell asleep, they dreamed of the many adventures their life could hold. The end. Great job listening to the story, friends. Who can tell me if you remember who the characters were? Who were the characters in this story? Who was the story about? The grandfather, good. And the children, right? The 3 grandchildren. And do you remember what they were doing in this story? What's one thing you remember that they were doing in this story? If you said counting the stars, you were right. If you said looking for pictures in the stars, you were right too. Remember, they were looking for animals and they were using their imagination. Great job, friends. Super job listening. I am so proud of you, and I will see you next time. Have a great day.